Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Again, we'll have more on that homicide investigation as soon as it's available, but we begin with an update from the Ontario Ford government today. They are walking back at least one restriction announced just over 24 hours ago. Playgrounds will reopen, but we're also hearing that Premier Ford is rethinking the police powers that were implemented. It all comes after big and small police services said they had no intention of making arbitrary stops to enforce the stay-at-home order, calling it unconstitutional. As we await a decision from the province, Dale Manukduk is live at Hamilton Police Headquarters with the latest tonight. Good evening, Dale.
It went into effect today. Police and bylaw officers have temporary authority to require individuals provide their home address and the reason why they're not there. They can stop you while you're walking, pull you over while you're driving, but many Ontario police services are saying they want no part of this type of enforcement. Many police services tweeting responses, including Hamilton Police, who wrote, "We want to assure Hamilton, Ontario citizens that members will not be conducting arbitrary vehicle and person stops for the sole purpose of enforcing the stay-at-home order."
Enforcement is not the way out of this pandemic. We need the community working together.
Brantford Police tweeted they will not be doing random stops. Niagara tweeted out the same sentence. Halton Police Chief Stephen Tanner said they would not be doing it during or after the pandemic, and a host of others agreed, including Waterloo, Peterborough, London, Toronto, Stratford, and Sault Ste. Marie, to name a few. Hamilton Deputy Police Chief Ryan Diodati says random police checks are not the way to build relationships with the community.
With having random stops, whether it be when in a vehicle or as a pedestrian, certainly would not build trust with Hamilton Police Service and members of our community.
The government is allowed under Section 1 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, allowed to suspend certain rights.
Rights are not absolute.
Criminal lawyer Dean Collette says suspensions have to be reasonable and justifiable.
And in my mind, I think we were getting to an area that a lot of people were uncomfortable with, that this was just not reasonable use of government power.
Political leaders Andrea Horvath and Stephen Del Duca were concerned how this would affect racialized communities full of essential workers.
When we use policing to solve social issues and public health issues, that's the danger.
Kojo Damte is with the Hamilton Center for Civic Inclusion. He points out the uproar of anger regarding the temporary police powers is something that Black and racialized communities deal with consistently.
When we are stopped by police, we have a plan, whether it's making sure our cameras are on, our audio recording apps are on.
He believes a few ways to reduce mobility and transmission would be providing paid sick days, rapid testing, and providing isolation centers for people in multi-generational homes. Director of Hamilton's Emergency Operations Center, Paul Johnson, also fired back at the new orders.
Hamiltonians are not going to see that in this city. We don't see a lot of value in that, quite frankly, from a bylaw perspective.
Instead, Hamilton bylaw officers will continue to prioritize enforcement at large indoor gatherings.
People know what the rules are. There is no grace period. There is no education happening. It's now we're going to lay charges.
Last week, Hamilton bylaw laid 47 charges in residential settings, many a result of complaints being called into the city. Now, it was also announced yesterday that provincial border checks will begin Monday, preventing anyone from Manitoba or Quebec from entering Ontario. However, according to this new order under the Emergency Management and Civic Protection Act, there are 21 provisions that allow for the freedom of movement. Those circumstances include work, medical reasons, or if you own multiple properties across provincial lines and there's a critical issue pertaining to damage. If you want to see that full list, you can visit chch.com. Nicole?
Dale Manukduk breaking it down for us tonight. Thank you, Dale. Joining us tonight is Halton Police Chief Stephen Tanner to talk more about the added police powers to the Ford government introduced just yesterday. Chief, your tweet this morning took a strong stance against these new measures, saying you won't be randomly stopping vehicles in Halton or people for no reason. What was your reaction to hearing the measure from the government yesterday, and why did you join other services in saying no?
The bottom line really is we will never do anything random. It's just open to being unfair to people. It's unjustified. We need to have some grounds to do what our police officers do, and that they act responsibly, and accountability is so important. And they do that day in and day out. So I don't want my police officers or any police officer to be put in a position where they have to do something which is going to seem very blatantly arbitrary. We will stop vehicles if we have grounds to stop vehicles. And we will enforce COVID legislation when it's essential. But it's got to be really balanced, Nicole, and we need to engage our communities and explain things to them and educate them.
Many have called this move unconstitutional. Was there any consultation between the government and the chiefs of police across the province, or did this announcement really come as a shock yesterday?
No, it's always nice to get more leadway and more time to prepare for things. And sometimes the situation dictates that that's not permittable. And I certainly respect that the government reached out to us, the Premier himself and Minister Sylvia Jones and the Deputy Minister reached out to the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police yesterday afternoon. And then we had another call at 5 p.m. With ministry staff. And that's all to try to iron out the details of what this means to and for the police and for the citizens that we're sworn to protect and serve.
Was there any pushback on that call when you were talking with Sylvia Jones and the Premier?
Yeah, a lot of police chiefs will express different opinions and are concerned on the arbitrariness of random stops. So there was a lot of discussion around that. What would our authority actually be? We're still waiting for some final direction through the ministry staff to say, here's what all these different things mean. And that may change before it actually comes out, hopefully sometime later today or early tomorrow.
And finally, we know Halton, obviously, Hamilton, Niagara, other police services, big and small across the entire province, have said no to these random stops. How will Halton officers go about responding to pandemic issues now?
Well, it really is the same approach we've been taking all along, Nicole, and that is that we need to engage with our citizens. We need to educate them and talk to them about what the situation is, what the risks are, what the rules are, because not everybody understands them and not everybody has that up-to-date information. So we're going to ask and expect our officers to do that education piece first, and enforcement will be that kind of last step only when it's absolutely necessary and depending on the seriousness of the situation. We've also developed a very interesting QR code, which we've given to our officers. Any person can scan that code. It's available on our website. It will be at the front doors of all our police facilities. Any citizen can scan that. The beauty of it is the information behind that QR code will always be updated by the different levels of government. And in our case, each of our 4 municipalities. The QR code will take the individual citizen to that page. They can click on their town, find out what the rules are, what they can do, what they can't do. And if that changes, like it may again tonight, that will be updated. And so it's all done seamlessly behind the scenes. And it gives our officers an opportunity to really educate and also give our citizens the most up-to-date information they could possibly have.
Chief Tanner of the Halton Regional Police Service, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.